Welcome back to PodX. For today's podcast, I'm really very excited. Our guest for today is Akshat Rajan. He is a speaker coach, a trained speaker coach, and he is someone with whom I sent a DM and I really enjoyed talking to him. We've had one conversation till now, but the conversation was so deep, it was so loving, such positive vibes. And I really wanted to share this conversation with everyone because it is something which I thought everyone would really learn and gain value from. So Akshat, thank you so much for being a part of PodX.
Thank you so much, Ayush, for having me. I'm super excited for this as well.
Oh, so before I start, I really wanted to tell you this. You have like really beautiful eyes. Like they're just amazing. It's off, but it's amazing. So I wanted to start off with, when you were 13 years old, such age 13, you were the youngest person in the whole world to ever host a TEDx event. So I really wanted to start from there. Tell us about a bit about that part.
Sure. So, wow, 13 was 10 years ago, and I think I could not have had a better start in my life, in my adultish life, I guess, than starting there with TEDx. So it was actually in computers class where I was with a friend, Sankalp, and both of us were watching this TED Talk we never heard of TED Talks before. And we were like, we should do something like that in school because we always felt like there was so much education out there that we weren't getting in our school curriculum, So we thought this would be a cool way to bring people who are actually doing really cool things and get them to share their ideas with us so that people are inspired and people want to do more and learn more. And we found out that there's a program called TEDx that exists. So X stands for Independently Organized Licensed TED Event. So we had to apply for a license from TED, and they had never had 13-year-olds apply for a license before. So it was a long drawn process, which usually should have been 4 weeks, but ended up taking 6 months for us to get our approvals and our licenses. So by the time I was in grade 9, we got all our approvals and we ended up doing our first event after that, and it ended up being a super success. I think we had like this guy from TED from India who was like mentoring us and was making sure that we were keeping to the standard. And like with TEDx, it's like a place for innovation, it's a place for collaboration, it's a place for people to come and share their ideas. That's what it's all about. And I think we were luckily able to get like with our school support and like a bunch of sponsors, like people from all over the world, from like comedians to actors to coaches to we've had hackers, we've had activists, we've had doctors. So really people from all walks of life, dancers. And I think the best part of it for me was I got to actually sit with these people and discuss their talk with them. I got to hear each of their stories unedited, and then I got to put together a talk with them. And that's how I kind of naturally became a speaker coach, because I had been put into this position at such a young age. And we got a lot of training and a lot of guidance from TED on like what it means to give a good TED talk and what speakers should say and what is good and what is not good and all these rules. We had a 300-page rule book to follow. And ever since then, it kind of only grew. I ended up doing TEDx all through my high school and all through college as well. So I did TEDx EMWS, then I worked and interned at TEDx Gateway, which was one of the largest TEDx's in the world, which happens at NCPA now. And then I worked at TEDx Tufts. I was the curator and executive organizer of the TEDx at my college. So it's been a long journey with TEDx, loads of speaker coaching, loads of learning people's journeys, learning people's insights. So I guess that's how it kind of shaped my personality in becoming obsessed with mental health and becoming obsessed with self-improvement and becoming obsessed with really just the human experience and ideas.
I think even I started my journey through TEDx. So basically I was at this TEDx talk and I saw another local entrepreneur. And he was my first guest on my podcast. So I heard him speak and I found his story to be really cool and inspiring and all that stuff. And the next thing after the TEDx event was over, I walked up to him and I asked him, hey, would you be a guest on my podcast? So technically I didn't even term it as a podcast. I called it an interview. And he agreed for me. He was like really sweet and kind. And he was my first guest. I wasn't sure if he would say yes or no. And he said yes. And then he termed it as a podcast. I wasn't even sure what to call it. And I think it goes back to, I think I told you about Gary Vee. So I used to listen to a lot of Gary Vee, and he used to keep on saying, you should create content. And, when I was listening to him, I kind of clicked at that moment. And that's how I started. So even my journey started through TEDx in a way.
That's crazy. I mean, TEDx is such a unique platform. It's such a unique way to kind of get people just excited to be in this world and to create, to innovate, and do more.
So, the next question which I wanted to dive in was this really interesting. When we spoke about spirituality, you spoke this really beautiful line, which, which is stuck in my mind. I also tweeted it yesterday and I sent it to you. Could you tell us that line? And like, how did you get into that spiritual part? Everything.
So with spirituality, I think my biggest lesson is the line you're talking about, is that we're not human beings trying to master our spiritual selves. We are spiritual beings trying to master our human selves. And that kind of took me a while to get to, right? Because when I was facing this frustration inside, and when I was looking to spirituality as a place to find answers, I kept thinking that, oh, I've done this thing, now I need to do this thing, and I need to keep doing more in spirituality. And like, it was almost like my parents were like, you're not becoming a saint, like, you're not going to become a guru, like, chill out, like, And so I was just like, yeah, in a way I realized that, oh, a lot of the things I'm learning, the reason I'm getting so obsessed with it is because this is already who I am, not because this is who I'm trying to be, right? What we're trying to do is be human. What we're trying to do is learn what forgiveness means, learn what trust means, learn what empathy means. These are all human values. And what we are already is spiritual. We are people that have a consciousness. We are people that have an energy. So we are people that can connect to each other through that consciousness and through that energy. We are people that can transcend time and space through meditation. We are all of that already. We don't need to, we can learn how to be that more, but that's what we already are. What we have to put our efforts in is all of those belief systems, clearing, doing all of that shadow work, doing all of the work that helps you love yourself more, doing all of the work that makes you see why you are in pain or what part of you hasn't healed and how can you actually actively work to heal that part of yourself. So that was kind of what that quote meant to me and what that learning meant to me, because I was like, wow, I'm really trying to just go like one up on spirituality, which I'm still doing, but it's just like that didn't become like my life's goal, because I said my life's goal is to be as human as I can be,
But how did you dive into that part? Like, what was the reason why you went into spirituality? Was it, what triggered that?
So it was quite funny, actually. I was 1 year into college, and I had just gone from being someone who was born and brought up in Bombay, who had never lived anywhere else, to living in the US, in Boston, in a country which I had been to before but not lived in, and with a new set of friends, with a new community, a new area, a new phase of my life. I still was feeling in my first year of college very lost. I was feeling kind of not grounded, and I didn't really know how to translate who I was, and that was really frustrating me, because I was in a space where I couldn't tell if I was happy or if I wasn't. And I think that was a result of the fact that I had told myself that being sensitive is not a good thing, because we're brought up in a patriarchal society where, especially with men, it's like, you can't be emotional, you can't be weak, being weak. And I think it's made me have my walls really high. And so after my first year in college, I was kind of feeling like not satisfied, because I think the thing is, when you have these high walls and when you detach yourself from being sensitive, there's a positive, I guess, where like you're not hurt, nobody can hurt you, nobody can get to you. But the negative is that you can't feel the other good stuff either. You can't feel the happiness exuberantly. So I think being material gave me that. So after my first year in college, I did a theta healing workshop, which is basically a basic and advanced course and a manifestation course in in healing, in actual healing. You learn how to heal people, and you learn all of these belief systems and where they come from. And I think that was a stepping stone to the spiritual world, because after that I went on to do like art of living camps with the happiness program, the online meditation program, then I did the silence program, and that kind of introduced me to this whole spiritual world. And but it was really theta, which was, I think, like marketed to like the 21st century millennial, where like this is spirituality, it's different than religion, you know, it's spirituality is about like is attached to psychology. And I think that's where I made this link, you know, that so we're genuinely are spiritual as our nature, but the point of us being on this planet is to be as human, to learn what it means to be human.
Yeah, there were these like two courses which you really spoke about just now, and they really interested me at that moment. So could you tell us about the art of spirituality and the happiness course? Like, what was in that course, and what did you learn from there?
Sure. So in theta healing, it's a lot of things. You know, it's like you learn how to give, connect, to feel and read energies from people. It's kind of like Reiki, but it's very different. But I guess in the same category. With the happiness course, it is done by Sri Ravi Shankar and the Art of Living. So in the happiness program, you learn something called the Sudarshan Kriya. And the Sudarshan Kriya is a breathing technique. And this breathing technique is something that I practice every day and would recommend everyone to practice and learn, because it really grounds you. It basically allows you to change your breathing to different speeds. And I think that breathing and pranayam are super, super helpful in clearing your mind and settling it. And then beyond that, I think my favorite course that I've ever done in spirituality is the Advanced Art of Living course, which is called the Silence program. So the Silence program really is 3 days where you don't speak at all. And it's not just not speaking, it's not consuming yourself in anything, right? Today we're a society and we're a type of people that just constantly want to be consumed. We want to watch something, we want to talk to someone, we want to always be occupied. Nobody just sits and bees, you know, and that's the problem, right? So in this course, you're not allowed to read, you're not allowed to be on your phone. Yeah, I mean, they say it depends on how strictly you follow it for yourself, but you're not allowed to talk to anyone. You're just supposed to meditate all day, right? And it's in the first day, it's a bit hard, but as it goes into the second and the third day, by the third day, you have such powerful meditations, because when you cut off all your ways to kind of connect to the outside world the way we do, you know, we're always talking, we're always watching, we're always consuming. By the third day, you've kind of just become. And that's when you feel the meditations really deeply, you know, and that's when you're like, wow, I didn't even know I could feel these kind of things. And you're just with yourself and you find this grounding that you don't otherwise have in life. And you want to constantly kind of feel that way, like the third day, every day of your life. And that's why you continue to meditate, or you continue to do Kriya and things like that. Because when you have cut out everything outside is only when then you can go inside, you know. So it takes 3 days, because of how consumed we are, to actually go within and feel what's there.
I think I really want to try something like that. Like, even I've been telling my dad I want to get into spirituality, but then I've not really tried it out and all. Like, you know, there was a time when I wanted to go bald completely. Like, but my parents, of course, didn't allow me. So I really wanted to try this thing, which is where I want to go bald completely. This is before I turn 18. That means I barely have 6 months. I don't know how it will work out, if it will happen or no, but I really want to go completely bald and start living a monk lifestyle, but at home. So it's like an urban monk lifestyle, which is sleeping from 10 to 4. That is the time which we're supposed to actually sleep. Waking up at 4 a.m., reading different religious books and all that stuff. Then meditating, I think, at 6, and having one meal a day, and then just surviving on fruits the other part of the day. So I really want to try it out. I've visualized it, but then I just need my parents' permission.
Wow, you have a full lifestyle planned and waiting for you.
So, you know, another defining experience which I really wanted the audience to know was when you took 6 months off your college and did a program semester at sea, where you circumnavigated the globe and were learning from different parts of the globe and different parts of the world and various countries and all. So could you tell us about that program?
So semester at sea is a study abroad program. So if anyone is in college abroad, anywhere, or even in India, you can sign up for this program and you can take 4 months to get onto a ship. I think it's cancelled now for COVID, but as soon as COVID is resolved, I'm sure it's going to be back on, and you can apply other students who are the same age as you, and they have an itinerary chalked out. So you go to about 12 countries and it takes 4 months. And so I started in Germany, and then I went from Germany to Spain to Ghana to South Africa to Mauritius to India, Burma, Vietnam, China, Japan, San Diego. So you really go around the world, like along Africa, all around Asia, and then back to the US. And it is a program like none other. It's an experiential learning program. It's like like for example, I took a class in filmmaking, and my class was at the set of Game of Thrones in Girona in Spain. My class on social ventures was in actual low-income schools in Ghana and Myanmar. My class on cultural anthropology was in Kerala, where we learned about the coconut industry. So it's like your classes are in actual places around the world. You study while you travel, like when you're going from one place to another. You have some field classes in the countries, but the rest of the time you can do what you want. So you can explore the country with your friends. So it's like your weekends get clubbed together and you're traveling the world. So every week you're in a new place. And they've designed it so well because they've been doing it for so long, right? Because we went through 18 time zones when we were on that ship. And it was like there was so many things about the world that I didn't know. So there's actually a point where there's the center of the world, and there's like a little buoy thing there that says center of the world, and that's where the coordinates are 000. And we go round and round that point, and that's when we celebrate Neptune Day on the ship. So that's where there's all these ceremonies where you go bald, you have to kiss a dead fish, you can swim in like fish slime, and essentially you get promoted to a shellback, is what they call it in Greek mythology, because you've been to the center of the world. And as you go through these time zones, because the time is changing so fast, we actually have a ship time. So we don't know what time it is in the world or what day it is in the world, because we follow ship time. So if we had an exam, for example, they won't change the time because they want to make sure we get good enough sleep. But if we don't have an exam, they'll be like, okay, we move 1 hour ahead today. So it's like they literally control time. And also the best part about this program when I went on it was that there was no internet. So there is no connection to the outside world. Your world is that ship for those 4 months, and your classroom is the entire world. So a lot of people ask me, what is the best place you went to? But I would genuinely say that the best place on semester at sea is on the ship, because that's where you kind of process everything you're learning. That's where you're like waking up and being like, wow, I'm on a ship traveling the world with the coolest people in the world, and I'm getting to see 12 countries. I'm literally waking up in a new country every day. And I don't know how many of you have watched Sweet Life of Zack and Cody on Deck. It is literally living that life. There's like a juice bar, and there are classes and professors, and it's so cool because it's like once we were in class, for example, and suddenly there were dolphins and we could all see it from class. So class was just over. We ran outside and we were like, and just watching all these dolphins and these whales, and it was just a completely out of the world experience. I think it was so important for people to do something like that, because as a generation we're too online, and it was a nice world that existed where nobody had that. Today, and on the ship, no one knew me for stalking me on Instagram or on Facebook or anything. I didn't have my best friend's numbers until the end of the ship. Like, there was no communicating on the phone. It was quite funny, when we left, the first day there was internet because we were still on the ship, we were still at the port. But as the ship went into the sea, the internet disappeared. And suddenly you could tell that it was weird to have a phone with you. And just experiencing that, I think, opened my eyes to so much about what technology and social media has done for us in a negative way. Of course, it has revolutionized the world, but everyone needs to have their boundaries with it, because there's a whole world that exists outside of it as well.
I really wanted to know that you've been, when you were off the ship, when you were in these different countries and all, what was something that you learned during that time? When you were in Africa, when you were in San Diego, when you were in Germany, different countries. So what was something which you learned? Different things, actually. There'll be a lot of things which you learned, but yeah.
Honestly, I fell in love with the earth. Like I was not such an outdoorsy person before going on semester at sea, and I just went from one landscape to another, from like dry beaches in Ghana to like the beaches in Cape Town where the water of two different oceans were coming together, to the Table Mountain and these like insane skies and colors. And I was just like, I just wanted to be outdoors doing things all the time. I think I learned the most about culture and about how similar yet different and unique every culture is, and how that's the coolest thing about culture. I think I always say that the only thing have in common is difference. And I think like when we were in a small town, for example in Valencia, and we were just like with the locals enjoying one of those like nights that they have on the weekends with all the kids and all the grandmas and grandpas, we felt like we were part of their family. And then in Ghana with all of these college students and going and seeing the land of no return, that was also a really eye-opening experience, because it showed us the history of the slave trade and how it happened. It was a museum that commemorated and remembered. Really, it was a memorial for what happened. It didn't really commemorate, but yeah. And I think just like having experiences like that, like going in like Burma on like a hot air balloon and watching a sunrise, like jumping off a plane in Cape Town. I think I was just like, wow, there's a whole world out there and there's so much to experience, so much to learn. And with the right type of people around you, there's just no stopping you with what you can achieve and do.
That's amazing. I really want to try that out now. Like the way you sold it to me, I think I just want to try it out once post 20 or something like that. But this is
when you go to college, because if anything it instilled me with this drive to make my life anything but boring. I just like always want an adventure now.
So, another part which I really wanted to talk about was, which you also told me, which we spoke about on the call. Right now, everyone thinks they really have their whole life figured out and all. But then I really believe this, that it should not be in that way. And we should actually try to understand what we actually like doing and what we don't like doing. And you told me a similar thing, which is that people in their late teens and early 20s need to have as much experience as possible trying new things, so that they know what they want and they don't know what they don't want. So I really wanted the audience to get a deeper insight onto what you spoke about and what that means.
Yeah, so I think the reason I said that to you in the call as well was that, we come out of college at the age of 20, 21. And I would say if you take normal life expectancy, quarter of your life is over, right? Because 20 years you've lived and the only thing you've done is studied. The only thing you've done is been in a system of education, one institution after another. If you immediately jump into a job and then you just keep going from job to job to job to job, or you just stay in one job, God forbid, for the rest of your life, how are you going to get some just time to figure out what you want or what you don't want, right? And I think that is the key point. When I'm not saying don't get a job, of course you need to get a job, or you need to start something of your own, or you need to keep yourself occupied and doing some change in the world. But I'm saying you have the space, you can take a breather, you can get out of college and say, I want to figure it out. Like the 20s are about figuring it out. You have the rest of your life to be on a desk for the rest of your life, or to find that one thing and then follow it for the rest of your life. But how are you going to know what that one thing is? How are you going to know what you're meant to do over here if you're not exploring and taking part in other experiences, And so I think you should always, whether it's, and it doesn't necessarily have to be after college. A lot of people take a gap in between school and college. A lot of people take a gap in college. So it can be whenever you want, but as long as you have some time where you are designing your time, where your time is not designed by a college and by exams and by assignments and by essays. It's designed by you. And there's no better time to do it than in your 20s, because that's the time when you want to figure things out. That's the time when you have that desire to enter a world and take it over. That's the peak time for that desire, because I think that, of course, that desire should only continue, but in most cases that desire only diminishes after, for some reason. So yeah, I think that's why I said, like, you can just take as many experiences as you can, work in different fields. I think it's always good to do something despite what you studied as well, so that you have an eye of, you should always do something that's right brain and left brain. You can do something creative, do something that's not as creative, but you just need to put yourself out there in different experiences in order to bring you closer to who you already are and learn how to embrace that and become a better version of that.
I think trying new things is something which I've been working on. So I told you this, which I'm really very excited about, is entrepreneurship and business. So I really completely love those two topics, and I spend a lot of time reading articles, books, and other stuff on it. And I think I've been doing this since 8th grade. So everyone really thought this, that I would take commerce in the 11th, and then whoosh, I decided to take science, and I wasn't sure about it. And it's barely been like 3 or 4 months in, but I'm definitely sure I don't want to continue in that field post 12th. So it did give me that tick mark about what I don't want to do in life.
Exactly. And that's the point, right? Even if you do something and you're like, at least you know.
So Akshat, we spoke about this before also on the podcast, and we spoke about this on call also, that, everyone's right now into social media and all that stuff, and people are becoming so consumed by it that people have actually lost human connection. And I wanted you to talk about this because you have actually run social experiments and try to understand the problem and find solutions for it. So could you tell us about that?
Yeah, of course. So I think one thing we have to get straight is that a lot of people are obsessed with social media is because they are lonely, and loneliness is an epidemic almost of its own. It's something that is affecting a lot of people. It's something that makes you feel real mental health issues. It's something that, if people don't know how to kind of help themselves through, is something that can be very difficult for people. And I think another thing we have to set straight is that the opposite of loneliness, people think, is togetherness. But it's not. The opposite of loneliness is intimacy. Right? And social media was made to help people connect with each other on a deeper level. But the problem is that connection, that human connection gives us power. But attachment sucks that life out of us. And we've gotten too attached to the social media because we don't know any better. Because these social media websites and agencies and apps are designed to manipulate us. They are designed to keep us on them, and unfortunately we just don't have enough restrictions in place in order for us to be saved from that. There should be limits for the amount you consume, because what social media does with the likes and the comments and the constant refreshing and comparing your life to someone else, it keeps giving you these dopamine kicks, and it's the same dopamine that is released in your minds when you have alcohol, when you have drugs, and so it's Simon Sinek's a thought leader in empathy and in leadership. He always says that giving social media away to your kids for unlimited time is the equivalent of opening the liquor cabinet and saying, if this whole adolescence thing gets you down, you can just go and have a beer or like a glass of vodka. Like that's not the answer, right? You can't numb the fact that that deep, meaningful relationships will take time. Social media also gives us instant gratification, and that instant gratification is the problem. There is no quick fix, but the only thing there is no quick fix for is job satisfaction and deep, meaningful connection. There is no quick fix for that. You need the patience, you need the time. It takes time for that to build. Similar to trust and things like that. It takes time for that kind of stuff to build, right? And what I think is that the deep crave that people have for human connection, the reason that human connection is lost is because people are obsessed and attached to comparing their lives with others, thinking about what others are seeing, constantly spending their time looking at what other people are doing instead of focusing on themselves. But that deep craving for human connection that social media makes us feel is more about that one connection that no one teaches you about. That one connection is your connection with yourself. There is no class that teaches you to build your relationship with yourself. There is no conversation that says this is how you need to be with yourself, you know. And you don't usually end up chalking out time for that connection with yourself, and that's the most important connection of them all, because how can you connect to someone else truly if you can't connect with yourself? And I think that's the point, right? Even what we were talking about before about figuring out what you want and don't want. You just want to keep coming closer to whoever you're meant to be, because you deserve that. You deserve to be whoever you're meant to be. And so social media really isn't the problem. Of course, it's manipulating us, but it's not the problem in itself. Like, if someone who understands and has boundaries with social media, someone who understands that relationship with themselves and builds that relationship, can actually use social media to take them to higher heights. That's why there are some people on social media that people who want to follow, and then there are other people who are only following. Then nobody wants to follow them, they just want to follow other people. You know what I mean? And that's why kind of social media has that difference, because other people liking you is a bonus. You liking you is the real gift. And I think that you just have to realize with social media that the version of me that's created in someone else's mind, or the version of you that's created in someone else's mind, is just not your responsibility. So I think that's my two takes on like social media and loneliness, and how we need to have more vulnerable, intimate conversations with each other so that we can grow and have deep and meaningful relationships. And these things take time, and they're not going to have that instant gratification or swipe right feeling that a dating app will give you, or that Instagram will give you with likes and comments.
And there was this really beautiful quote which I also heard, which I can relate to at this point now, which was, I think Jay Shetty said on his podcast earlier, which is, I am not what I think I am not what you think I am what I think you think I am. So, it's like we live in a perception within a perception. And the reason why it's happening right now is because of social media. So we want to look good in front of others. We want to look fancy. We have these things, I have these things and all. So that's what social media has actually done to a lot of people now. That's what I feel.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think people are trying more to seem like someone instead of actually being someone. You need to start being. We're all human beings. We're not human seems. So we just need to start being who we are, because then that'll reflect in whatever way. And so that the point is not to be on social media to try and seem like something else, right?
Another thing which we spoke about on call is that you are a youth ambassador at a program, Absolute Champions. You're supposed to organize these mental health and emotional strength workshops in different schools. So, what have you noticed in these workshops? Like, what do you do? What do you all do? What happens in that?
So these workshops are carried out by one of India's top business and success coaches. His name is Anand Chalani, and he has been coaching kids. He's coached millions of kids around the world. He started with Tony Robbins, who is an international coach, and he's the writer on The Simpsons. He's a comedian. He's been through his own set of mental health issues and bullying and stuff as a child, and he's come out stronger and has built himself to be like this coach that helps others and supports others. So I work with him in a capacity of a youth ambassador and youth coach, because what we do is when we go to schools that hire him, they do these weekend workshops with them. And these weekend workshops are designed to help students your age, perhaps, and younger than you as well, grade 9, 10, 11, 12, to become better versions of themselves by finding their potential, by enhancing their performance, by developing that personality that they don't get this time and space for. Like I said before, nobody teaches you how to connect with yourself or build that relationship with yourself. So we try and encapsulate as much as we can on a weekend in a school where we get access to the entire class, and we get to do interventions, we get to do We have a bunch of games that helps people get to know each other better on a deeper level, build things that build teamwork amongst people. I think really the interventions are the most powerful part of the program, because it really works one-on-one, where students get one-on-one live coaching in front of the whole class, and that's where the healing takes place, because there are students that are facing all kinds of things today, with the epidemic of the pandemic that's going on in the world, with the epidemic of loneliness, with general kind of loss of trust, loss of happiness, loss of self, that this 21st century pessimism that exists in the world. There has been so many mental health issues that have come to the fore, and especially in India, because our parents didn't get that sort of education, and our generation is starting to get that sort of education, and we can only hope that it gets better from here. But there are a lot of mental health issues, and mental health is just kind of very looked down upon, or not looked at extremely well. So it becomes difficult for these students to express themselves, and these interventions are spaces for them to do exactly that. If someone is being bullied, if someone is being fat shamed, if someone is being name called, this is kind of a space for them to come out and say what they say and see how they feel, because it's really at that time in your adolescence, when you are moving from getting approval from your parents to starting to get approval from your friends, that's the time when you care about your image and personality and the way you come across more importantly. Because as a human being who's a social animal, you want to acclimate to the larger tribe that's out there, right? You want to be able to be connectable, be someone can walk up to and talk to and stuff like that. And so that's where a lot of people face these self-esteem and self-worth issues. And so it's very important for schools to have a space for mental health trainings, for these workshops, and that's what we do at many schools around Bombay, and Anand does it all around the world. I only help him over here. And it's really, really cool to see, because there are times when there'll be someone who has been bullied, for example, and we'll call them up on stage and we'll say, there's a belief that hurt people and healed people heal people. So that's one of Anand's mantras. And he brings someone on stage and says, okay, if you've been hurt, then you've probably hurt someone else. And by the end of the time, literally the entire class is on stage, because everyone is apologizing to each other about something. And suddenly there's this whole new community feeling that the class has that didn't exist before. And suddenly everyone wants to support each other, and everyone wants to be there for each other. So that's what it relates back to everything we've been talking about, right? We are spiritual beings. We genuinely want to help people, but somewhere we get lost, somewhere we get stuck, somewhere we forget that we need to master these human things so that we can do that, because we don't want to confront our issues. So when that happens, and when there's space for that to happen, suddenly everything comes together again. Suddenly you're like, wow, I love these people, I love the school, I love being there for people, I love being me. Suddenly that enthusiasm is there, and I think that space really changes the mindset of so many students, because we see kids who've been flagged for depression, who've been flagged for having suicidal thoughts, who've been flagged for having anxiety, and we can see the transformation in them and see them talk to their parents in a way they haven't spoken to before, open up to their teachers and friends in a way they haven't spoken to before. And I think those are the moments in which we realize that the type of work that we're doing is so important.
But, I wanted to know this, how can one, get those building blocks in increasing one's mental health, one's mental strength? Like, how can they improve it?
Yeah, of course. I think
since you've done so many experiments, you've conducted so many programs, you have the experience about it. So I wanted to know about that.
And I think honestly, I get this question a lot, and it's a very different answer based on who I'm talking. My answer is very different based on who I'm talking to, because I think the younger you are, the easier almost it is to kind of work your way through. Easy and hard, but easier it is to work your way through it, because as you get older, you get more conditioned, in your beliefs, you get more rigid in your patterns, and it becomes more difficult for you to accept something that you didn't see before. But when you're still open to learn, and when you're younger, it's when you can actually make the difference. And I think first of all, if we had to talk about like what the building blocks of mental health are, there are many myths that you'd have to debunk. The first thing is that it's not really a measure of mental health to be well adjusted in a sick society. Okay, our society is very sick unfortunately, and so to be well adjusted is not a measure of mental health. You need it's the wellness essentially comes from taking care of yourself and being able to taking care of yourself in private, so that whenever you're in public, you're able to take care of everything around you. Because say you're not doing well, say you've been having agitating thoughts, you've been having anxiety. When something happens and you're caught off guard, you won't be able to react in a emotionally strong way. You will react just very reactionary. It'll be through emotion. It won't be through wisdom. And the point is to be able to react through wisdom, through what you know is right, through from that true sense and true person that you are. And that's the mental stamina you need, because mental health is like the same thing as physical health. You go to the gym to be strong, then you need to go to a therapist, or you need to, not even if you can't, today in India, you have to agree to the fact that everybody can't afford therapy. It is a luxury, it is a privilege, but there you go to someone to talk to them, right? And you open up about your feelings. That's what you do in therapy. And just like you take care of your body, you have to have spaces to take care of your mind, because your mind is a muscle too. And the stronger the muscle is, the more you'll be able to react out of wisdom and not out of emotion. So I think people respond to that. People respond to who you are, and and you almost immediately remove this load of you when you get that space, because you're like, okay, I'm suddenly starting to be that, not to quote Gandhi and become all philosophical, but you actually starting to be the change you want to see in your society, right? Because it's not just talking about it and doing something here and there, it's actually being that person. And it's also realizing that no amount of guilt can change the past, and no amount of anxiety can change the future. So mental well-being is really that finding that balance, right? It's finding that perspective. You need to be able to have two opposite things and still have them be complementary. There's a balance between work and play. You need work and you need play. There's a balance between solitude and socializing. You need to be alone and you need to be together. There's a balance between discipline and freedom. There's a balance between stillness and movement.
Okay, so Akshat, what you just said, it really got me speechless. I think it's so correct that we need to have that balance in different things. And the greatest power is to be self-controlled, to be able to train the mind and energy to focus on where we want it to be and when we want it to be. And I think you explained it really, really well in that part, being caught off guard. It can happen. That's why I think we need to work up on our mental health and improvement on that part. So that was really cool what you just said, everything. Yeah. So, while I was talking to you and, while I was going through your feed and all that stuff, I really felt that you are someone who wants to provide and help society a lot. You want to really help society with your resources and wealth, but what is different is that you also want to help society by helping them out, by reaching out their inner growth, having an impact on the way they think, their standards, their mindset of health. So when do you reach that level? Where does that come from?
I guess it's a culmination of all the experiences I've been through. I think I always wanted to know, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Am I going to work with my dad in the family business? Am I going to start something of my own? What are the interests? How do they align? But I think over time, I realized that my favorite thing to do is really just be able to discuss and talk to people about anything and everything, and be able to get down to the bottom of anything, to be able to understand relationships, to be able to figure out how kind of we are here and why we are here. So I guess I come from a religious and spiritual family as well, and we've had so many different spiritual and religious experiences. So I guess a culmination of all of those things combined and all the experiences combined has made me someone who believes in self-love and being able to figure out what we're here to do and making sure that we do it.
So, Akshat, you've been speaking a lot about these experiences that you've had, and the religious and spiritual experiences. And you've also told me on call that you had some of these out-of-the-world spiritual experiences when you did a lot of these courses and all. So could you tell us a few of those experiences that you've had?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the experiences and stories are really long, but I'll tell you a gist. I guess the biggest thing I learned, I think, from Theta Healing was that manifestation power, and I saw it in the weirdest ways of how everything is connected, and there's actually a law of attraction, and how what your thoughts are, you kind of attract that. And if you start acting like something is already with you, it'll actually come to you even if it isn't, you know. And I've had like really weird experiences, small things like like I needed a visa once, like really importantly, and usually it would have taken 2 weeks, and I was just like, no, I figured out a way, and I googled something, and I was like manifesting it, and I stuck the Canadian flag on my wall to visualize it and everything, and then I literally got a visa in 24 hours, which is not otherwise possible in Canada. And like so many other kind of signs that you see along the way, you know. Like there were a lot of times when I was like, I needed to be somewhere, I needed to do something, or something that seemed impossible just became very possible. Whether it was like reaching somewhere and suddenly all the lights went green, or like walking into a place and reading 11:11 as the time, and you know, think about to miss a train and then someone reminds me to get on it, and I think like these are all coincidences. But for me, what happened was that they all happened together within the span of the few months after I did the course. And that's when I was just like, there's obviously something to this, you know, because and I also saw how they are related to our belief system. So for example, once I was flying back to the US, and I kid you not, Ayush, everything came in my way. I had a problem at security, I had a problem at check-in, my bags were overweight, I almost missed my flight, everything was wrong. You know, I was late already, I went to the wrong gate. It was just insane how everything was wrong. And then I finally got onto the plane and I felt like crying, and I was just like, what's going on? You know? And I realized that I didn't want to go. And the manifestation power had become so high that just because I didn't want to go, it was making it so difficult for me to go. You know, like everything was just and those were things that I couldn't have controlled, you know. So it was just like to realize that, wow, your feelings really do have that power to manifest something. You can actually be in a state where, based on what you feel and what you think, your world gets created. Because it's like, I would say, don't be surprised if you made a decision and the universe acts on it like ASAP. So I guess like too many small experiences like that happened one after another. That was like, because I was also a skeptic going into it, you know. I was just like, is this true? Is this not true? But then I had no option but to believe in it because of these experiences that I had.
You know, I've had this like really similar experience. So I've been manifesting subconsciously, and I never really knew that. So in fact, I told you at my last podcast, I had spoken about manifestation, and that's when I realized I had been doing so much of manifestation subconsciously. So I think my first major podcast, which I told you about, was with Nirvan. I really believe that I had manifested that podcast. So basically manifestation is when you think things. And you know, when you constantly want it, you don't force it. When you constantly want it to happen to you, and you think about it in your mind, you want it and all that stuff, and it slowly starts happening that way. So I had literally told all my friends that I was going to do a podcast with him. I was so confident. I had just said it out, and I think when I said it out, all the energies, the universe, and all those things started working together in my favor. And literally, it took me 2 months. But literally after 2 months, I got that podcast. That was just insane at that moment. And later now, I don't know, back when I spoke about manifestation on my last podcast, that's when I really started thinking that, oh, that was manifestation. And I've actually done so much of it, and it was just insane. You know, I really wanted to know, you've done this course, and also what are some of the ways which you use for manifestation?
So in Theta Healing, they actually teach you, there's a separate course for manifestation and abundance. But I think in general, if you just had to talk about manifestation, I think manifestation has as a practice is something in which you have to be extremely specific about what you want. It has to be things that, and you should be able to have a range of things, you know, something that's small, something that's big. So like I would want to manifest a feeling, for example, for life, or I would want to manifest something like, oh, I need this to happen by next week. So they should be ranging in time, I feel, because a lot of people end up manifesting for things that are supposed to happen to them in like 10 years, and then they always feel like it's not working. But I think the good thing is you should always give it time, because with manifestation, power only increases as your faith increases in that manifestation, right? And so the more confident you are that something will happen, the more likely it is to happen. I think even in psychology, if we remove all of this spirituality, there is a expectation bias. You expect something to happen, and then it makes it happen faster. So I guess even with manifestation, you just need to be specific. You need to have time. You need to have manifestations that last along different periods of time. You need to be able, and this is the most important part, you need to be able to visualize whatever it is as if you already have it. So say you want a car, you need to be able to think about how you're feeling when you're sitting in that car and that you already have it, you know. Say you want to get on this Forbes list, you want to see your name on that list and see what you feel. You have to already start. If you recognize a feeling, you are attracting that feeling. So today, if you are recognizing feelings of sadness and depression and irritation and anger, you will attract more and more. The emotions have a guidance scale. They are both spirals. There's a downward spiral and there's an upward spiral. So you need to be in states in which you attract further and deeper into that state. So if you want to be on the upward spiral, you want to go from being content to being hopeful to being optimistic to being positive to being completely joyful and full of life, fulfilled, you know. Whereas on the other end, if you're pessimistic and you focus on that, you'll be overwhelmed, you'll have doubts, you'll have anger, you'll have jealousy, you'll start blaming other people, and that'll lead to depression. So it's the more you focus on, the deeper you go. So you just want to focus on things so that on things that take you upward instead of take you downward.
And you know, also there's this thing which I've been really very keen on. It works out for me, which is the thing of visualization. So I think there was actually an experiment conducted. So there were 3 groups made, and they were asked to take these basketball 2-pointers. So one group used to actually practice for 20 minutes every day, taking those 2-pointers. Another group was actually only made to visualize taking those 2-pointers. And a third group was actually not done anything. So they were not allowed to do anything. And every day, I think for 14 days, they did that for 20 minutes each day. And at the end of 14 days, they found out the results that group 1 and group 2. So group 1 was practicing for 20 days, for 20 minutes a day, and group 2 was visualizing the shots. And they realized that both were doing equally well. So even when they visualized those shots, they were as equally well as the ones who practiced it. And a lot of people, I think, do it even in the sports world, which is that they visualize what they really want, how they want to play the game. So a lot of athletes also have their game and all that stuff visualized. And I think that's really cool. So it has even worked out for me. Like a lot of my podcasts, so there are some podcasts which are like really great. So the ones which I'm really excited for, I've actually visualized it a lot of times, like 2 or 3 times, and they always turn out to be great. And there are some, of course, which may not turn out to be great. There are a few ups and downs and all, but I think the visualization skill has always helped me, and that has always worked for me, I think. So subconsciously, I've been visualizing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think there are different types of visualization. You can have a mood board where you print out things that you want to see in your life and you put them all and you keep them in your room and you keep looking at them. So that's something from The Secret that they say that you should do. There are a lot of books that help you, like The Secret, The Magic, that help you kind of understand these laws of attraction better. I think so if you believe in astrology as well, I just finished an astrology course, and they say that manifestation has a lot to do with the moon calendar, the lunar calendar. So whenever there's a new moon, the manifestation powers are very high. You can that's the time you should be setting intentions. And the full moon is when those intentions come to a fold, because the full moon creates the feeling that whatever you asked for in the new moon or however you were behaving in the new moon has now actually come out to be what it is, because that's the moon cycle, right? And like, if you ask me in a just general terms, today, like, our bodies are 70% water, correct? And the oceans are also water, and the tides are controlled by the moon. So obviously the lunar cycle has some effect on us as well. So the point is that we should be looking at these new moons and these full moons. And if you want to take a step deeper, you can even go in and see what sign the moon and new moon is occurring in. So for example, if it's a new moon in Aries, then your new moon in Aries manifestations will come to a fold during the full moon in Aries. If it's a new moon in Virgo, then whatever you manifest then, or whatever you're feeling then, will come to the circle and will come up for you during the full moon of Virgo. So there are so many ways and so many disciplines in which manifestation makes sense, and like, you can understand it through astrology, you can understand it through visualization, you can understand it through setting intentions. So I think all the practices together, when you see all of them, you are able to kind of develop something of your own, you know, and something that works best for you. And I think that's the best That's best thing you can do, to find something that you have seen works for you and continue believing in it deeper and deeper.
Okay, I'm really loving this topic and this conversation a lot. Could you tell us a bit more about it? Like something I think I don't know a lot about it, so I just wanted to know a bit more from your side, from your experiences. What do you know more about it? What we can learn and take away from it?
I think just look out for, I think there's so many types of astrology. So if you're interested, I took a course at the Art of Living as well, at the Vedic Samsthan Dharma, which is the fundamentals of astrology. And that kind of is all based on Vedic astrology. So it's based on birth charts and timings and stars and planets and stuff like that. But even if you don't want to go so deep into it, and if you already have a manifestation practice, just start aligning it to this kind of, because there's a group consciousness, in the world, and these star signs and the way the stars are moving and the planets are moving have an effect on that consciousness. So it's just important to know simple basic things like, like a sun has this effect, a moon has this effect. The moon is the planet of emotions, Mercury is the planet of communication, sun is the planet of self and of ego. So if you just have a basic idea, tomorrow if you read something astrologically related or about planetary movements, you have some sense of what it's going to be. So like, for example, like right now we're in Mercury retrograde, and believe it or not, in India a lot of people believe this. So I was doing an internship once at a company called X Billion Labs, and they don't sign contracts during Mercury retrograde because it's inauspicious. Because that's not a time when you want to be able to, because when Mercury is a planet of communication and it's in retrograde, which means that you cannot communicate what you truly desire in the best possible way. And so why should you make a deal during that time? You should wait for that time to end and then make a deal. So it's like the small hacks that, I mean, if you go into it, you can even decide when to eat and when not to eat, and every minute of the day what you should do. But I think that's not healthy, frankly. But I think just in a general sense, just having information about it in today's day and age, and even if you don't fully believe in it, just learning about it to see if it makes an impact or doesn't make an impact in your life is super important.
I think I really want to dive into that part. Of course, not to the extreme level, like where I plan when I eat and all, but I really want to know all those planets and all. So I'm definitely going to do my research in that part. And I want to ask this question, which is that what kind of role do you see and what role do you see yourself playing in that world?
In
to build it to that world.
2050 is a long time away. I think
30 years from now.
Yeah, 30 years from now, I think just looking at the way the world has changed in the last 10 years, I think the next 30 years are going to be a lot about asking ourselves as a species and as humanity, what wrongs have we done in these 10 years and how can we make them right? Because I think when it comes to climate, for example, I hope that in the next 10 years and by 2050, the world is carbon neutral, because if it's not, it is literally scientifically proven that the degrees are going to rise up to 4 degrees, which will put like my city, Bombay, completely, probably Goa as well, completely underwater. And I think we just need to make sure the next 10 years are all we have for the climate to make things right, So we need more companies, more leaders, and more people who are, taking the lead and really being in charge of a world that they are looking at long term. And I think in a way COVID has like brought about a lot of issues that weren't otherwise being looked after, and like has fast tracked a lot of these things, so that's good. But I just hope that 2050 is a world in which people listen to each other, in which there's an emphasis on values such as gratitude and resilience and growth. And I hope that if you're talking about my role in it, I hope I have been able to contribute to raising our consciousness and our group consciousness. And I hope that, I've been doing all the shadow work and all the work that helps me become a better version of myself every single day. And I know I'm sounding like a bit optimist, but I think when optimism is put with stubbornity, it's good, because I call myself a stubborn optimist, because it's like, if you're not stubborn about the things you want or about bringing the change you want to see, you can't really expect that change to happen. So it's like almost like it's like a realistic optimist. It's like if you want to be an optimist, but you also want to make that optimism true, right? And I think we just need to be more ethical than the society we grew up in. As our generation, it's our moral responsibility to be more ethical, right? And I just hope that the essence of my being has brought smiles to many people, and I want to leave my mark in that way. And I think we've already started this, where like consciousness, this is my favorite quote, I would say, where consciousness is the new sexy, kindness is the new beauty, and inner peace is the new success. I think we all have a lot to learn and to reach that state. And I think if people do that, then we can start looking at each other without all of the differences and without all of the discrimination, and just as human to human and as one global family.
That it's not like completely happening, but I think really very slowly it's been about kindness, about gratitude in the counseling sessions and all that stuff. Of course, it's not going at the pace it should be going, but I'm really glad that it's kind of started now in comparison to what it was happening earlier.
No, for sure.
So Akshat, I really wanted to ask you this question. Before I end this, what is your last advice for anyone who is listening to this podcast?
I think if you've listened to this podcast, you've gotten a taste of what all is out there and what all is still there to explore. I think, if anything, please start working on your relationship with yourself. Ask yourself questions that you haven't asked yourself before. There are so many things happening online that can actually help you connect with yourself deeper. There are games, there are questions, there are things you should ask your parents. If you Google like what type of conversations are this and what type of conversations are that, just expose you're spending so much time on your phone anyway. Make sure that you are more in control of your information diet, because that's also really, really big. So be more in control of what you are consuming, because it's all the small things. It's what you watch, it's what you read, that's who you become, right? And so be more mindful of that. And I guess the more good stuff you're watching, the more good stuff you're seeing, you can attract and be more of that stuff as well. So just strive for that and strive to make your relationship with yourself the best, because all you can really do in this lifetime is become the best version of you that you can be.
I think I just wanted to add to that point about content consumption. So basically, I've been really noticing this also. The type of content we consume actually builds that mindset. So if we continuously consume something that is negative or continuously about violence, the mindset starts getting directed in that way. While if we constantly consume something positive, if we constantly consume about empathy, kindness, gratitude, the mind starts moving in that way. That is what I felt. And also there's like this, okay, this may sound crazy, but the reason why I've not really put out content that, so I put out a lot of podcasts and all that stuff, but I've never put out content that has bad words or swearing and all that stuff, because, I'm looking at this as like a 40 or 50 year thing. So this thing's going to stay forever on the internet. And maybe 50 years later, when they listen to this podcast, I don't want them to learn something negative or bad from me, because when they see this podcast 50 years later, I think I'm putting out content with that mindset also.
That's good. Congratulations, Ayush. I think you're doing such a great job, and you're spending your time and your content and you're making content that matters. And I think that's so important. I was looking through your profile and your podcasts, and I'm just so excited for you and all the things that you're going to do, because clearly you're on the right path, and I wish you luck in all of that.
Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I really had a great time. Like, it was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me.